Week 3 in the NFL, and it's time to set your fantasy football lineups. And here to help make sure you start all the right players and none of the wrong ones, Sports Illustrated senior fantasy analyst Michael Fabiano. And Fabs, let's go to quarterbacks. Who are you starting and who are you sitting?
This one might seem obvious, but Justin Herbert's the QB 25 right now. I mean, it's brutal, but it's not his fault. Keep him in your lineup against the Chiefs. This is going to be a very high-scoring game at Arrowhead Stadium. And then my sit quarterback is Joe Burrow. Last week, 3 interceptions against the Chicago Bears. Now he's got the Pittsburgh Steelers. I get it. Derek Carr played well last week, but typically they are very dangerous at the big catch-up bottle at Heinz Field. So Burrow, to me, is a fade unless I'm in a 2QB or Superflex league.
All right, let's move over to running backs. Chris Carson is your start of the week. James Robinson, your sit of the week for the rushers.
And Carson had a couple of touchdowns last week. I mean, the yardage hasn't been tremendous so far this season, but the Vikings are not good against the run at all, folks. So make sure that Carson's in your lineup. I have him ranked among my top 10 running backs for the week. And you mentioned James Robinson, and a lot of folks out there probably have to play him. I'm one of them as a flex. The matchup's not great against Arizona. Their defense isn't terrible against the run, but they haven't given up a touchdown to a running back through 2 games. And this whole Jacksonville Jaguars offense right now is just a risk for me. Trevor Lawrence not playing all that well, albeit through 2 games during his rookie campaign. James Robinson's also not getting the usage that I'd like to see him get, so he is a risk this week.
For wide receivers, we're not going to Hollywood, but we're talking about Hollywood. Marquise Brown of the Ravens is your must-start wide receiver. DJ Chark, on the other hand, he's your sit wide receiver of the week.
Hollywood Brown's been tremendous. He's averaging over 20 points per game. He's looked very good. And he's got Detroit this week. I mean, you play Detroit, you start those guys. So Hollywood Brown should be in your lineup as a wide receiver 2 or flex. And I mentioned how bad the Jaguars offense has been. And, you know, DJ Chark has had 1 good game and 1 bad game. And in the 1 good game, he only had 1 real big play. He's currently 3rd in terms of the target share among the Jaguars wide receivers behind Marvin Jones and Laviska Shenault. As I mentioned, Lawrence is not playing great. So Chark, to me, is a risk, even in what could be a high-scoring game.
All right, finally, let's talk about some tight ends to get in your lineups. That's Noah Fant, but make sure you leave Mike Gesicki on your bench.
Yeah, Fant's been very good, averaging almost 13 points per game through 2 games, and he's got the Jets this week. The men in green have given up the most fantasy points to tight ends dating back to last year, and Jerry Jeudy's still out with the ankle, so Fant is a very good play. And then Mike Gesicki. He was better last week, but, I mean, he had to be, right? He didn't have a catch in week 1. Jacoby Brissett will be starting for the Dolphins. The matchup isn't great against the Raiders, who held Mark Andrews to 5 points in week 1. Gesicki, much like many tight ends in the National Football League, is a major risk for fantasy managers in week 3.
All right, we want to help you win your fantasy football matchups in week 3, and we have some great analysis all up on Sports Illustrated to help you do just that. Go check it out, si.com/fantasy.